Weatherfield has just delivered one of its darkest storylines in years, and one small, quiet scene may have said more than any big dramatic confrontation ever could. A little girl's words, a doorstop, a knife, and a version of events that either proves a desperate man's innocence or hides something far more disturbing. Corrie fans are convinced they've just been handed the real answer to what actually happened the night Rachel died, and if they're right, it changes everything we thought we knew about Richie, about Lucy, and about who the real villain of this story might be. Stick around, because we're breaking down exactly what happened, why it matters, and what it could mean for one of Coronation Street's biggest storylines of the year. If you've been away from the cobbles for a few weeks, here's the quick version of what's been unfolding, because this story has moved fast. Richie, cousin to Tim Metcalf, arrived on the street after being thrown out by his wife Rachel following a chaotic lads' night that Tim had been trying very hard to keep quiet about. Sally reluctantly let Richie stay with them, though she made it clear she wasn't happy about it, and Tim, ever the peacemaker, tried to encourage his cousin to go home and fix things with his wife. That encouragement led to tragedy. When Tim went round to return Richie's forgotten wallet, he found Richie standing at the door, and what followed was the discovery of a crime scene that has gripped the show's audience ever since. Rachel was found dead in the family home. Richie had blood on his shirt, and within days, he was arrested for her murder. For those who don't watch every single episode, a bit of background helps explain why this story is landing so hard with viewers. Coronation Street has spent much of this year building toward a major thriller storyline, one that producer Kate Brooks has described as the biggest of her time on the show, touching almost every corner of the community. Back in February, the soap aired a special flash-forward episode that jumped ahead to reveal a murder had taken place, without confirming who the victim or the culprit would turn out to be. That structure, 5 potential victims, 1 eventual killer, was designed to keep fans guessing for months, and it's exactly the kind of long-game plotting Corrie has become known for in recent years. Rachel and Richie's story is one piece of that much larger puzzle, and it's arrived with the kind of emotional gut punch the show clearly intended. Now here's where it gets complicated, and where the scene everyone's talking about comes in. Richie hasn't simply confessed to a cold-blooded killing. From the moment of his arrest, he's maintained that he acted in self-defense, and crucially, his young daughter Lucy has been backing up that account. According to Lucy, her mother Rachel had been tormenting and even hitting Richie for some time, and on the night in question, Rachel came at him with a knife. Lucy's version of events suggests that Richie, cornered and afraid, grabbed a doorstop and struck out to protect himself, only for the situation to end in his wife's death. It's a version of the story that, if true, would completely reframe Richie not as a killer but as a victim of prolonged abuse who made one catastrophic decision under threat. The scene that sparked this latest wave of fan theorizing is a deceptively quiet one. Lucy, clearly traumatized, has been sleepwalking and suffering nightmares since her mother's death, and in one recent episode, she was found alone in Victoria Garden after wandering off, disorientated and distressed. It's not a scene filled with shouting or confrontation. It's a little girl, half asleep, reliving something horrific. But it's exactly that rawness, that lack of performance, which has convinced a huge number of viewers that Lucy isn't lying, exaggerating, or being coached. Fans have pointed out that a child acting out a traumatic memory during a night terror is a very different thing from a child repeating a rehearsed story to protect a parent. If Lucy is genuinely reliving the attack in her sleep, viewers argue, then her account of Rachel turning violent first is almost certainly the truth, not a story cooked up to save her father from prison. Social media exploded within minutes of the episode airing, and the theories have only multiplied since. Across Corrie fan forums and on social platforms, viewers have been dissecting Lucy's behavior frame by frame, with one particularly popular fan comment doing the rounds suggesting Richie killed Rachel and that Lucy likely witnessed it, with a huge fight breaking out the moment he returned home that night. Another widely shared reaction speculated that Lucy may have watched her mother push her father past breaking point, essentially asking whether Rachel's own aggression was the spark that lit the fuse. There's also been considerable sympathy directed toward Richie himself, with plenty of fans arguing that a man who endured ongoing abuse and finally snapped in a moment of genuine fear deserves a very different kind of storyline than a straightforward domestic killer, and that the show has a responsibility to handle that nuance carefully given the seriousness of the themes involved. Of course, not everyone is convinced, and that's part of what makes this such compulsive viewing. Corrie has a long history of unreliable narrators and last-minute rug pulls, and longtime fans know better than to take any character's account at face value, especially when that account happens to be delivered by a frightened, grieving child whose father's freedom depends on people believing her. Some viewers have raised the uncomfortable possibility that Lucy's story, however sincerely she believes it, may not be the full picture, and that the show is deliberately leaving just enough ambiguity to keep the audience guessing right up until a courtroom reveal. Adding fuel to that fire, the show has now brought back a familiar face from its police procedural past. DC Wiley, last seen years ago during Max Turner's extremism storyline, has returned to Weatherfield specifically for this case, and his presence signals that the investigation into Rachel's death is far from over. A seasoned detective doesn't get wheeled back onto the cobbles for an open-and-shut case, and fans have taken his reappearance as a strong hint that there are still holes in Richie's story that the police intend to pick apart. Meanwhile, the fallout is tearing through the wider Metcalf and Platt households, and it's some of the most emotionally charged material the show has produced this year. With Rachel gone and Richie behind bars, Lucy has been placed into the care system, only for her foster placement to collapse almost immediately, leaving social services scrambling. Tim, without fully consulting Sally, offers to take his young cousin in, and the strain of caring for a deeply traumatized child has already started to crack the Metcalf marriage. Tim has openly blamed Sally for pushing Richie out too soon, arguing that if his cousin had been allowed to stay with them longer, none of this might have happened, a claim that's understandably left Sally furious given she was the one who took Richie in against her better judgment in the first place. Lucy's own behavior has become increasingly worrying too, with scenes showing her lashing out at other children, including a tense moment where she grabbed Lily Platt's arm after a cruel taunt, only for Jody to step in and defuse things before it escalated further. It paints a picture of a household and a child buckling under the weight of a tragedy nobody in Weatherfield saw coming. So, what does all of this mean going forward, both for the storyline and for the actors bringing it to life? If the self-defense narrative holds up under police scrutiny, Corrie has an opportunity to tell a genuinely powerful story about domestic abuse from an angle soaps rarely explore, a male victim whose desperation leads to tragedy rather than escape. That's rich, difficult territory, and it would likely dominate awards conversations if handled with the sensitivity the subject demands. On the other hand, if DC Wiley's investigation uncovers inconsistencies in Lucy's account, or evidence that contradicts the doorstop story entirely, the show could be building toward a much darker twist, one where Richie's claims unravel and Lucy is left having unknowingly protected her father's lie. Either direction sets up months of compelling drama, and given how much the production team has invested in this thriller arc since that February flash-forward episode, it's safe to assume the truth won't come out easily or quickly. There's also the emotional toll on Lucy to consider, and how the show plans to handle a child character carrying this much trauma. Her sleepwalking, her nightmares, her outbursts at school, these aren't small storytelling details. They're building blocks for what could become one of the more sensitive child-centered plots the soap has tackled in some time. Fans are already speculating about whether Lucy might eventually recover a fuller, more accurate memory of that night as the trauma processes differently, potentially undermining or reshaping everything she's told the police so far. It wouldn't be the first time Corrie has used a character's fractured memory as the key that finally unlocks the truth behind a murder, and given the show's fondness for long, slow-burn reveals, it feels entirely possible that Lucy herself holds the real answer, whether she realizes it yet or not. For now, though, The mystery sits exactly where the writers clearly want it, tantalizingly unresolved. We know Rachel is dead. We know Richie is behind bars claiming self-defense. We know his daughter is backing his story while falling apart in front of everyone who loves her. And we know the police aren't finished digging. Whether that quiet, heartbreaking scene in Victoria Garden really was the moment fans finally cracked the truth, or simply another carefully placed piece designed to send the audience down the wrong path entirely, is something only Coronation Street's writers can answer. Given the show's track record with this kind of slow-burn mystery, don't expect a clean resolution anytime soon. To sum it all up, Coronation Street's Rachel murder storyline has become one of the most talked-about plots on British soap right now, built on a foundation of grief, trauma, and a child's fractured account of the worst night of her life. Richie's claim of self-defense, backed by Lucy, has convinced a huge portion of the fanbase that Rachel herself may have been the aggressor, but the return of a seasoned detective suggests the police, and the show's writers, aren't ready to close the book just yet. With the Metcalfe family fracturing under the pressure and Lucy's trauma only deepening, this story is far from over, and the next few weeks on the cobbles could bring the twist that finally reveals what really happened that night. That's everything we know so far about this shocking Coronation Street twist, but you can bet there's more to come as this story develops. Do you think Richie is telling the truth? Or is there something darker still hiding beneath the surface? Let us know your theories in the comments below. We genuinely want to hear them. If you enjoyed this video, do us a favor and hit that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a Coronation Street update. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.